Next is a Perricone Rosé. Now the rosé is becoming a category, it's becoming just it's a lot more popular than 20 years ago, and it's funny how people now are all looking for a very pale color, which is easy to achieve with the Perricone, but sometimes I discuss with my clients because sometimes you deal with grapes which even in just pressing the fruit, you get a lot more color, and then they go crazy just to fine and clean in order to get a lighter color. Why? Just because the reference is Bandol, is southern France, so the whole world now should make rosé with that color. But to me, it depends on what grapes you use. If you use a more color wine, why shouldn't I make a rosé with a more intense color? That's again the difference between making wine for the market or find the market for what you do. That's a big difference, and that's the only way to make this world more interesting and more an experience. But again, this is a grape that is really working very well for a rosé. It's fresh and fruity, as nice acidity, nice texture in the mouth, so it's very enjoyable. You want to say all the question at the end, or you may discuss a little bit the whites and rosé if you want? It's up to you. I don't know how, because you may move on.
Yeah, we'll take questions for the end.
Okay,
I'm sure
right.
There'll be a few.
Yeah. So the next is the Frappato. This is a 17. Now it's interesting because obviously, Sicily has always been associated to power, structure, color, intensity, and but lately in the last 10-15 years, because of the Etna wines and because also the Frappato, which is a grape that obviously is not so concentrated and so rich in color and everything, that can show that Sicily is not just power and color and concentration, but it can be also something a bit more textural, more balanced and more fresh as a red wine. And the next is the most important red grapes, which is a Nero d'Avola. Frappato as well is a very Sicilian grape, as well as a Nero d'Avola, and so it's is a nice example of a very well balanced and not over manipulated Nero d'Avola. So this is also quite pure. Nero d'Avola is a grape that has got a very good acidity. It is very, very fresh, and is a great food wine because acidity and tannins are very important in a wine that you want to match with some food, because anything you eat, what is left in your mouth are two things: fat and proteins. The fat is removed by the acidity, that's chemistry, and the proteins are removed by the tannins. So if you want to really enjoy a wine with the food, the wine must have tannins and acidity. A lot of wines which have low tannins and low acidity, they may be enjoyable before the meal, but with the meal your mouth stays very dirty, so they don't really clean your mouth as more tannic and acidic red wines do. And Nero d'Avola is an exceptional. This is 18. Also, acidity, that thanks God, has been now reconsidered as part of the quality, because we are coming from years in which acidity was hell. Acidity, I mean, is one of the many flavors provided by many of the grapes we use for making the wine. It's like bitterness. Bitterness was, has always been hell, but bitterness is one of the many flavors. In Italy we have the radicchio trevigiano, which is a vegetable that is very good and very famous, that is very bitter. So bitterness is not hell. The whole world shouldn't be sweet. Should be what it is. It depends on what you eat and what you experience. So I think it's acidity is coming back, thanks God, to be appreciated if it's in good balance with the rest of the wine, and if you know how to enjoy it. And again, if you eat some food, acidity, what you may perceive like a little strong when you taste the wine, when you taste the wine as we do now, but you eat a piece of anything, and acidity actually helps to enjoy the food a lot more. Buono questo Nero d'Avola. Next is Perricone. This is not a Sicilian grape. Is a Petit Verdot, so is a more international grape. As I was saying before, like all over the world, even at Settesoli, we went through a little bit the French colonization at some stage, and that was the time in which it's like the super Toscans. I'm from Tuscany, but also the super Toscan were basically 30 years ago, was a time in which we were showing a lot of confidence in our grapes, in our roots, in our traditions, and we started using somebody else grapes, somebody else winemaking. That was basically, telling the world, we don't believe in our own things, which wasn't good. It's like Super Toscan was a great example. Never been used a small barrel in Tuscany before the 80s. Never been used the Cabernet with the Sangiovese. Never. And but in 30 years ago, if you didn't add some Cabernet or Merlot to your Sangiovese, you were simple. If you were not using small barrels, you were just the Italian flask sold in Little Italy with the long neck and the Italian flag around it. That was the Sangiovese by then, which was very sad. Now you can go out in the world and proudly deliver your pure Sangiovese or a blend of Sangiovese, Canaiolo and Colorino aged in large cask, and people love it. 40 years ago, you were out. It's very simple, And so we all went through that colonization in a way, and slowly we are getting rid of it. And I think here, we went through that as well, and we have, some, which I'm not saying that some of the international grapes are doing very well in Sicily, like they're doing well in Tuscany or wherever. It's more about the concept that, to me, each region should only work. When you have your own native grapes, why should you use some others? It's a pity, and it doesn't make much sense, but I have seen that happening all over the world. You think, there are some countries like Armenia, Georgia, that they have hundreds of native grapes. Armenia's got over 200, Georgia over 500. And now, thanks God, they are start recovering that. But 20, 30 years ago, even there was Cabernet, Merlot, and just why? Anyway, so this is a very good wine because it's Petit Verdot is actually a grape that is a late grape, and likes very much a very nice, warm and sunny environment, and that's where it gets really plenty of flavor. It's very juicy, it's very, to me also, another important concept that has been forgotten in the past decades is drinkability. So drinkability in the past was associated to simplicity. Why that? When we eat, for example, which is the best food? The one that you want to eat more, and then you stop for two reasons. One, either because you are full or because you are eating white truffle like last night we did, or beluga caviar, and you had to stop, otherwise your plastic can get melted. But that's a different story. But why with wine the very best should be almost undrinkable? Because you drink a little bit and then too much. Who says that? Romanée Conti, is it a drinkable wine? Ooh, very drinkable. You can drink 3 bottles in a row if you can buy them, you can afford them. But so drinkability, thanks God, is back now to be considered like the center of quality. To me, a wine that is not very drinkable is not good. Because, you know, I love drinking, and, you know, and to me drinkability is the center of quality. And thanks God now we are recovering that. And drinkability is the opposite of concentration. A textural wine is very drinkable because it's, you know, your palate has a different feeling. Concentration is tiring. You know, when you drink something very concentrated, you get tired. But you are not if you drink a textural wine. It's a completely different story. And Petit Verdot is really, in Sicily, showing the kind of juiciness, freshness, and drinkability, which is not easy to find because in some other environment, you know, the Petit Verdot can be very heavy, very, very heavy. And then obviously on top of it, they put new small barrels and then becomes undrinkable, you know. And I like very much also, there has been an interesting switch in the last few years from sweetness to sucrosity. Sucrosity is something I like, and it's not coming from sugar. It's coming from the feeling of, you know, sweetness without being sweet. You know what I mean? I don't know how to describe in English, but, you know, it's I like sucrosity, which is not the residual sugar. It's more, you know, many things together that give you this sense of juiciness and sucrosity, and, you know, get a lot of saliva in your mouth. It's very sapid. I don't know if it's the proper word in English, but it's thanks God, you know, there is less and less sweetness and more sucrosity and juiciness and freshness and drinkability, which is what the consumer should focus on. But unfortunately, you know, what we are missing in the world of wine is education. There's a lot of manipulation, the press, the ratings, and with that, they're not teaching anything to the consumer. The consumer, they're becoming robot. They look at the number, they don't even read the description, which is the most important part. They look at the numbers. I'm part of the 90 plus wine club. They don't even know what the description is. They have no idea. So they don't grow. They don't build themselves. That's the big difference between education and manipulation. So there are more and more sheeps. And the sheep, you know, they're easy to manage because you have 3,000 sheep, you put a dog on top of it, and then they all move up and down, right and left, back and forth. I love Renaissance, which was an amazing time of the history of human being, because during Renaissance, people went back on themselves, and through the observation and the study and the culture, they developed themselves. And that's been the best time of the history of the world, producing an amazing amount of art, and people were really growing. And now I feel that the people are not growing, they are becoming more and more manipulated and more sheep, you know, they follow. Now there are the influencers. Ooh, stay away from them, you know. I don't want to be influenced. I want to hear people, experts, you know, talented people, you know, people who can teach me, but I want to build myself. And that's the problem. So it's a difficult word, you know.